and this is Weaponized.
5 years, we've seen such a dramatic change in how the topic is regarded by mainstream media. Congress is looking at it. The public is energized. I mean, it's an amazing about-face and transformation of events I never thought I would see. But I'm curious, in private conversations, you've told us the Navy is global. It's a big place.
Sure.
But it's also a small place.
Yeah.
So can you give us a sense of, during these 5 years of tumultuous change and so much public attention on the UFO issue and questions, is it discussed among your colleagues? Is it something that's you talk about on a regular basis?
Right. Well, it is and it isn't. It kind of just depends on who you talk to. All my buddies, sure, I'm the Fox Mulder of the squadron. So UFO stuff. Talk to Guts. But it is and it isn't. Certainly, 2017 was a big year. When someone like Commander Fravor comes out and shares his story, that's a big deal. It's a really big deal. Someone like Chad Underwood that you've talked to, when they come out and provide their story, that's a big deal.
So
Ryan Graves, all the
for
rest.
people that don't know
Sure.
about this stuff, right? So you're talking about Commander David Fravor and
Yeah.
Commander Chad Underwood.
Yeah.
Commander David Fravor was the guy that chased a UFO for the United States military, famously called the Tic Tac UFO incident, which is now famous because the New York Times and everything, the interviews George and I did
Sure.
on with Dave Fravor, and also with Commander Underwood. He's the guy that filmed the Tic Tac UFO. So we have witness report from a pilot who's head of the Black Aces. Then you got somebody who he sends out to film this UFO, and he films it, and
Yeah.
it's clear footage, and it's put out to the world.
Yeah.
So for people that don't know, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You saw that, and you were like, when I first told you I was talking with a Navy commander who chased the UFO, what was your reaction?
It's bullshit. It's total bullshit. I didn't I didn't believe you, man. And again, that kind of goes back to the whole, sorting wheat from. You got to have a good BS meter. I don't have to tell you that. You really got to have a good BS meter with all this stuff. When you first mentioned that you had somebody of the status of Commander Fravor, I didn't believe it. I go, that's too good to be true. It's a perfect witness. When you think about it.
Why?
Well, and like I've told you before, privately, I wish the general public more inherently understood the quality of the caliber of witness, the quality of witness that a guy like Commander Fravor is. Why? Number one, he's an aviator, so I gotta, I'm biased towards that. But no, listen, he's a jet jock. He is as close to the real life Maverick Tom Cruise that you're gonna get in real life. Okay, he's the CO of his own squadron. Which again, in our world, there's no one above that. Obviously.
Black Aces.
The Black Aces, jet squadron that deploys around the world. He's the CO of that squadron. He's a Naval Academy graduate. He's a Top Gun graduate. I believe was an instructor. Don't quote me on that. But again, this is somebody that when they speak, people should listen, and take what they're saying seriously. And so, do people talk about it? Yeah. But it's not prolific, There were even today you'll come across folks, active duty folks. You ever heard of Commander Fravor? And go, no, who's that? I go, how the hell do you not know about that? So no, we do talk. It's not at least my perspective is it's not a dirty little secret or anything like that. If people want to talk about it, they talk about it, which is great because another reason of why I would agree to come on and do something like this. There's stigma with this stuff. There's been a stigma for a long time, and I think we're turning a corner. It feels like it, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
How does that show up in your kind of line of work? How does the stigma to unidentified flying objects and pilots, having to deal with that near misses?
Yeah.
Should we engage it? Should we not? How does stigma show up in your field?
Well, the way it comes up is, it's kind of those that have had an experience and those who haven't, right? For the guys that have run into this stuff on a daily basis, for them it's real.
And they have.
That's a fact.
Pilots are running into unidentified flying objects on a daily basis. They're seeing them, picking them up on radar.
That's a fact, okay? For them it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And stigma be damned, because you can't tell a guy something that just flew by your cockpit at 50 feet away from you. You can't deny that. The way the stigma shows up is for those who aren't interested in this stuff, who don't understand the aviation safety aspects associated with UAP. And so that's kind of why I classify it that way. Those that have had experiences and those who haven't. And for those who haven't, it's just hard for them to wrap their mind around it. It's still a big mystery. We don't know what this stuff is.
2017, Jeremy and I were able to break the story of the Tic Tac twice on Coast to Coast, months before it came out in the New York Times. And because of how Jeremy treated Commander Fravor with respect, that word gets around. It helps cultivate other sources.
Sure.
And has served both of us really well. When that story comes out, though, it leads to changes in the Navy. I mean, the Navy comes out and says, we want to make it easier for our aviators and other service members to go ahead and report this stuff when it happens, so that there's no stigma, less stigma attached. It's not going to hurt your career.
Right.
The Navy has led the charge. I mean, I want to know if this is a source of pride for you when you compare it to, say, the Air Force, which I'll just say it, they're flat out dragging their butts on this stuff. They've been uncooperative with Congress, with the UAP task force. You know that they're sitting on a big pile of information that they're not sharing, and if they'll have to be dragged kicking and screaming. The Navy, at least ostensibly, is much more cooperative. Are you proud of that, the Navy doing that?
Without question, obviously, yeah, I'm biased towards the naval service, but I am proud. That I'm proud of the way that we've tried to tackle this topic, because there's a real concern out there. We got guys in the air coming across things that we don't know what they are, and the risk for a near mid-air collision, or God forbid an actual mid-air collision, I mean, it's there. It's really there. And the fact that the Navy has tried to implement, maybe easier reporting procedures or guidelines to make it okay for pilots not to be afraid to say, hey, I saw this thing, I don't know what it is, but I almost hit it.
Have you seen that change? I mean, now, is it easier to report UFOs? Because I remember when you were looking to, when are the new commandments coming down on, like, how to report this?
And from personal experience, from my perspective as a helo guy, I don't think it trickled down to our level necessarily, because maybe it wasn't, we weren't necessarily the type of platform that was encountering this stuff on a daily basis. But again, if you talk to guys on the East Coast, based out of Oceania, certainly the paradigm had shifted for guys like that, for sure.
And you've directly talked to a lot of these guys.
Absolutely. So yeah, for guys like them, it was definitely a noticeable change. Was it fleet-wide? I can't speak to that. I don't really have an opinion on that. But the fact that, like you said, George, the fact that the Navy did at least seem to be taking the lead on it, absolutely, it's a point of pride for me. And I won't bash my other brothers and sisters in the other services, but I can't speak to what their plans are, what their intentions are with all this stuff. But there have been some glaring silences, if I can classify it that way, from other services, that it kind of makes you scratch your head, because this is not only a Navy thing, it's not only an East Coast thing, it's not only a West Coast thing, right? It's worldwide. People are seeing this stuff everywhere,
So you have direct knowledge that unidentified craft that don't seem to have the typical, what we'd call propulsion, right? What we'd see, rotors, wash, plumes, heat signatures, that these are being encountered by our, we'll just say, Department of Defense, or we'll say our all branches of the military that are in the air doing this, they're being encountered. They're encountering these things that we don't know whose they are. We don't know who operates them. We don't know their intent. I mean, you were saying that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah, that's your opinion.
Again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the DoD or the service in any way, but no, I mean, if you're asking me, in my opinion, absolutely.
That would seem important to me, that our defense systems, as my perspective is that seems important to me, that our defense, we should know whose vehicles these are.
Absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, the profession of arms is to defend, the country, and to defend our allies around the world. And if we're coming across stuff that we don't know what it is, we want to know what that is. I've heard there's been some criticism in the media over the years about, this threat narrative, Well, I'm sorry, but you can't blame a guy whose job it is to assess threats and take care of them. I mean, that's our job.
Explain that a little bit more for people that are totally new to this. Is that the threat narrative? So the idea that there are UFOs.
The idea that
they're unidentified objects.
Sure.
And what's the threat narrative? What is that you're talking
about?
Well,
the threat narrative being that a lot of the language that some people have used when talking about UAP or unidentified is, for example, the ATIP, right?
Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification, right? The word threat is in the title of the program, right? And there were people that had some problems with that or issues. Why are they looking at this as a threat? We don't know what they are. Well, again, from the perspective of the profession of arms, from the perspective of the defense and the national interests of the United States, unless you know what you're dealing with, you kind of have to, unfortunately, again, just my opinion here, it's just a default position that you kind of have to take, because at the end of the day, we don't know what we're dealing with, you know. Right. So I think that's why, I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, I mean, so you've got the one perspective, which is that from a national defense position, we should know who's making these objects, who's flying them, what the intent is. If we don't know, we better find out. And then, you know, from another perspective, it's a flight safety issue. You've got these objects and people every day. There have been some near misses. Yeah. And then there's the bigger existential questions that come after that. Another narrative about the UFO phenomenon has been here for so long. Maybe we're just seeing them more because our technology and our radar systems are integrated. We have better camera systems, better radars. Maybe it's always been here. And we're just, you know, the idea that there's an increase in frequency, it appears that way to us. But we don't know for certain, right? Because maybe they've always been there and we're just seeing them more. Who knows?